planning for contingencies. What could go wrong? Well, I may not have energy that day. I may just be burnt out that day. Whatever it would be, some contingency that could likely or possibly come up. Had to deal with friends or had to deal with something. I had to schedule something. Things that would take me or derail me from my certain number of hours a day per questions, et cetera, going forward. And now working it back. Okay, how do I plan for these contingencies? Well, let's say, for example, I had to do something else a particular day that I would not be able to study for 2 hours, for example. Okay, then my contingency plan was cut off an hour on each end of my sleep to make up for that time. Okay, or alternatively, instead of taking an hour out of my day for lunch, take 30 minutes out and just eat lunch for 30 minutes. Same thing with dinner. Take 30 minutes off my hour for dinner. So now I've regained that 1 hour to work out as a contingency. Bam. Yo, what's up, everybody? This is the End-to-End Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Young Nguyen. And as my friends affectionately call me Ninja, you all know my listeners can call me the Ninja too. This is the End-to-End Podcast, the alpha to the omega, the beginning to the end, talking about life, entrepreneurship, motivation, inspiration, and offering morsels in this all-you-can-eat buffet called life. Happy to be back in the Bohemian Studios, and as you all know, or if you're new to the podcast, at the moment we don't have any sponsors or we don't advertise for this podcast. So the only way we can grow our audience is that if you find value in any way in this podcast or any of the other ones, in terms of you found it funny, learned something, found it entertaining, or whatever, please do like, comment, share, and follow. Like, comment, and share, and follow. We're on all platforms at the N2N Podcast. N2N Podcast. Full episodes are on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes, but you can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook as well. And as always, if you have any questions or have a topic that you'd like for me to talk about, you can always send it to ask@the N2N Podcast.com. We are slowly growing our fellowship, our followship to several thousand, and we certainly appreciate everybody who's followed us and supported us this far, and we want to grow and continue to grow onto our mission of affecting billions of lives in a positive way worldwide. I got a question the other day as to, for those of you all don't know, I'm physician trained, also a lawyer. I have a law firm in Houston. I do have a master's in finance as well. Involved in several entrepreneurship projects, including this podcast, that are in various stages. And so it's my idea to hopefully share this knowledge and experience with you all as I continue on my journey to help you focus on your journey in affecting and achieving our truest, highest controllable potential. Go back to episode 1 if you want to learn what that is. But I got a question recently, having achieved all these educational goals, built a successful law firm in Houston and other businesses, sort of how, in terms of goals, how do I visualize or how do I approach goal setting and achieving these goals? And what I like to do is, and I've always done this, is I envision a S curve. Okay, so like an S. I'm going to draw an S, right? But let's turn this S directly to you. Okay, so the start of the S would be furthest point away. It comes back to me, curves down, goes back to you, or the furthest point, and then it comes back to me. And by analogy, what does that mean? What does the S curve represent? So let's say, for example, back in the day, for example, we would have to complete a textbook in a certain amount of time. Okay, let's say it's a 1,000-page medical textbook, and we had 5 months to complete the book, or go through the book, all the exercises, all the learning. How I would approach this, and this could be applied to any project or any goal or any idea that you have in mind, is the first part of the S, the furthest point away, would be, what is the end point? What is the goal? Okay, what is the goal that I want to achieve? It could be any project. Like I said, in this example, it would be, reading 1,000 pages in 5 months. Okay. At that furthest point away, now I start to work backwards to today. I break down the steps, easy, achievable, accomplishable steps back to me in intervals or periods of time. So in this example, let's say, is a 1,000-page book in 5 months. So by extension, that would mean, for example, I need to read, if I really wanted to break it down, 200 pages a month. Okay? Break it down even further. That would mean I have to read 50 pages a week per month. Okay? Talking about, let's call it a 5-day week. Breaking that down, if I have to read 50 pages a week, right, then I've got 10 pages a day. So, working backwards, for me to achieve that long-term goal, I'll break it down to the smallest incremental steps that are possibly achievable. I want to say easily achievable, but possibly. Because why? If you break down the steps and the individual steps are too big for you to achieve, then your goal is set too high or your goal is set too far, right? It would be discouraging to know before the project even starts that you're unable to even execute the smallest incremental step to get to your goal. Okay? So, again, start with your goal, the furthest point of the S away from me, and I'm working backwards in incremental individual steps. Now, here's the curve. I go back. Okay, so I've curved back. Now I'm working forward towards the goal again in my mind as I'm planning. And that forward step, that U-turn back to the end point, now I'm breaking down each of the individual steps and thinking about what could go wrong. In the whole universe of things that could go wrong, what can go wrong? And then I'm taking each of those steps that I've thought about coming to me, building it forward, and developing contingency around what could possibly go wrong. So, for example, back to the book analogy. I have to read 1,000 pages in 5 months. Let's say 3 days in a row, for some reason life happens and I'm unable to get my 10 pages in. Right? Because remember, my goal was 1,000 pages, 200 pages a month, 50 pages a week, 10 pages a day. But let's say for 3 days I'm unable to read. So now for whatever reason, car breaks down, life happens, got to take care of some other stuff, got to work, just something happens where I can't read. These are contingencies that I have to think about, okay, that might put me off my plan to reach my goal. So now I'm 60 pages behind. So as I develop my plan to get to my goal and I'm thinking about all these contingencies that can go wrong moving forward, now I'm working back again to me. So the S, remember, goes like this, and now it's back to you, and now it's coming back to me. That bottom curve coming back, now that I've listed, things that might go wrong or contingency planning, that last curve back to me is how can I plan to adjust for these contingencies based on the likelihood that something will happen that would throw me off my original plan, that top part of the S. Okay? So in this instance, okay, let's presume that I know for the third month, 2 weeks out of that month, I'm on vacation, which I'm probably not going to read. So that's going to put me behind 100 pages because of the 2 weeks out. So my contingency plan would be, for example, instead of in that first month, instead of 10 pages per day of reading, right? Let me just read 15 pages a day or 20 pages a day for that first month. If I know that in a subsequent month, for example, I'm going to be out 2 weeks on vacation or doing whatever, unable to do my task. So if I'm building that leeway, now I'm not stressed out over the fact that I'm not going to be reading over two weeks on vacation. Okay, so again, that S curve is designed, okay, And now that I do that replanning on that bottom, that last curve coming back to me, that puts me into today, where now I can execute my plan. Okay, so it's as simple as that. I've done this throughout my life. In today's world, for example, if I've got a trial, okay, trial date is set by the court, and let's say the trial is on a case, contested case. Let's say the trial is 6 months out. Well, what I'll do is 6 months out, I'm starting to work backwards. Okay, when do I need to take depositions? When do I need to get expert reports in? When do I need to file certain documents? So on and so forth. What if when we go to trial, what witnesses do I need? Okay, what is my damage model that I'm going to ask for? What amount of money? What type of jurors do I want in the jury pool? All these things that I'm thinking about, planning for the end goal, a successful trial in 6 months, I'm building back today. Then I go forward again and take these individual steps. Okay, well, what if I can't find for example, the police officer? Maybe I have to subpoena him. What if my expert physician is unavailable? Well, now I got to shift some dates around. What if the other side presents a formidable witness that I need to deal with? Okay, now I'm building those contingencies, and I'm working back to me on how do I handle the contingencies in my plan. Now I'm back to me. I've got my full plan structured. What my goals are, the steps in my plan, the contingencies that may occur in my plan, and how I'm going to deal with those contingencies. You see, once you get all that set out ahead of time, before you even start to take action, right? You've already thought about the realm of possibility of things that can go right and the things that can go wrong, knowing ahead of time that if you execute those steps, you'll get to your goal by natural planning. It's just going to happen. So you're not sweating or stressing over the end result. You've already planned for it, and you've already planned for contingencies. Now, of course, things are going to happen out of nowhere that you're not able to plan for, okay? Heaven forbid, a death in the family or just something unexpected, wildly, low possibility of even happening, yet it happens. Okay, these are the tail end of the bell curve. These low probability things still can happen. We can't plan for everything, but you've planned for the bulk of what you need to do, what could go wrong, what your contingency actions are to execute and get to your result. This thought process, this S-curve, since high school. I didn't know it at the time, but that's essentially what I was doing in my brain. I only added the S-curve as an overlay to what I'm actually doing to visualize. But I've been using this for decades, over decades. And so far, it has served me exceptionally well in trying to get and to accomplish my goals and grow my business, grow my law firm, grow me as an individual. And this applies to personal goals too. If I want to get to a certain body weight or body composition or percent body fat or whatever, let's say I have we're going on vacation to the beach and I want to look good. If I want to get to that goal by a certain date, when your vacation date is, okay, well, let's start working backwards. And let's say, I want to lose a certain amount of pounds. You mark it out in terms of time and duration and periods, what you need to do to get there, your change in course of diet, things that can go wrong. Maybe you twist an ankle, those kind of things, and plan it out. Okay, so it applies in your personal goals, your business goals, your career goals. So think about it in terms of that S-curve. That S-curve turned forward. The furthest point away, you're working back, breaking it down into achievable steps, moving forward, thinking about contingencies, things that can go wrong, bringing it back in terms of how you can plan for those contingencies, back to yourself, and now go execute. And just by example, to drive the point home, I'll give you a very short duration example. The reality is that I never set out specifically to be a physician. It's kind of like a a confessional chair, so to speak. The idea of being a physician sounded great to me. My talents and natural skills led me in that direction. My math, understanding science, the topics that are kind of required to become a physician, I excelled at. But there was never a time, my dad wasn't a physician, as I'll get into a story at future podcasts, but they were business people, entrepreneurs, salt of the earth kind of people. So as refugee immigrants from Vietnam. So nobody in my family was a physician. There was no inspiration. Most people that become physicians, or, a relative was one, or the parents were one, or they just had this urgent need to feel like they wanted to become a physician, or they just felt like physician was a good career to make some money. Whatever the case may be. That never occurred to me. Okay, the reality is in undergraduate, my degree or my career, no, my degree path was biology pre-med, nothing said, okay, you have to be a physician. Finished college a year early, finished in 3 years. The idea was, hey, I finished early, man. I'm going to reward myself. I'm going to go travel for a year and find myself, figure it out. But this was around March, my quote senior year, because I finished all my hours. And a friend asked me, hey, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to travel to take a year off. And he's like, well, why don't you apply to medical school? And as you all know, at that time, to get into medical school, you had to take the MCAT, the kind of like the SAT, but for medical school, or the LSAT for law school, or the GMAT for business school. So I said, man, when's the next exam? I wasn't even following this. He said, well, the next exam is in a couple weeks. You should just take it. And if you do well, great. If not, okay, whatever, go travel the world. And I said, well, yeah, what the hell? And that's kind of my life. Like, it is what it is. If you listen to podcast episode, I can't remember the exact name, but, it's like sometimes you got to say, what the fuck? Let's just do it. Yeah, what the fuck? Let's just do it and see what happens. So, but I had no plan. Okay. Obviously, if I'm going to go pursue something like take the MCAT, I'm going to try to do the best I can. It's a goal to do the best I can. But had no plan, didn't take a review course, didn't know even review courses at that time existed. We're talking about many decades ago. So I had to develop a plan. I had a 2-week time frame, develop a plan. Okay. And I researched all I could about the tests, and my plan was simply do as many practice exams as I could. That was my plan. And how do I get my hands on practice exams? Well, back in that day, bookstores were a thing. So drove to the Barnes & Nobles in Waco, Texas. I went to Baylor, sick and bears. But, yeah, went to Baylor and went to the Barnes & Nobles and picked up 3 MCAT review books, knowing I had 2 weeks out. So, again, on that S-curve, 2 weeks out, got to take the test. Okay? Three exam books was part of the planning process. Working backwards, okay, to feel comfortable, I had to do what I felt were 2 practice exams per day. So over the course of that time, of course, with the weekend break, so just kind of mental checkout. So that's 10 days, 2 exams a day, 20 exams, practice exams. And now these practice exams are several hours long. So it's not like, hey, it's 1 hour and I'm done. It's sit down, time yourself, several hours, go through it. And not only that, is that the questions I got wrong, I have to go back and review what I missed about it, or why did I read the question wrong or didn't understand or whatever. So these are long duration days. Okay? Now, 2 exams a day coming back, but knowing that I had to add that additional time to review what went wrong, but at the same time now breaking down these practice exams into a certain number of questions per hour, because like any standardized test now and then, it's timed, right? So you have a certain amount of time to finish as many questions as you possibly can. So through that methodology, I'm working backwards. Okay, I need to do, for example, I can't remember, it's been so long, but let's call it, you have an hour, and I broke it down to, okay, a question every 2 minutes. So that's 30 questions per hour I need to get through. Okay, and I'm working backwards and I'm working backwards. So that was my plan. Now going forward again, planning for contingencies. What could go wrong? Well, I may not have energy that day. I may just be burnt out that day. I may, whatever it would be, some contingency that could likely or possibly come up. Had to deal with friends or had to deal with something. I had to schedule something. Things that would take me or derail me from my certain number of hours a day per questions, et cetera, going forward. And now working it back. Okay, how do I plan for these contingencies? Well, let's say, for example, I had to do something else a particular day that I would not be able to study for 2 hours, for example. Okay, then my contingency plan was cut off an hour on each end of my sleep to make up for that time. Okay, or alternatively, instead of taking an hour out of my day for lunch, take 30 minutes out and just eat lunch for 30 minutes. Same thing with dinner. Take it 30 minutes off my hour for dinner. So now I've regained that 1 hour to work out as a contingency. So, starting at the end, 2 weeks to the exam, break it down into achievable steps, moving forward on, what could go wrong, and developing contingency plans coming back. And here we are. So that was a 2-week cram, so to speak, for the MCAT. And as they say, the rest is history. Did reasonably well. That matched with my GPA and, my essays and all that allowed me to get into one of the top tier med schools in the country. And the rest is, so they say, is history. But that's a slight short example of how this S-curve goal setting and goal planning works. And I think it's a very simple way for you, no matter how small or how big the goals are, to break it down into manageable steps and work through it on your way to achieving your plan and your goals of success and becoming the highest controllable potential person you can be. The S-curve for goals. Okay? Once again, this is the End-to-End Podcast. Find us on all social media platforms at End-to-End Podcast, the number 2 podcasts. I am the Prolific Ninja. Look forward to talking to you again very, very soon.
What's up, man? What's up, man?